be the guy that's threatened by your success. I swear to God, I will do anything. I'll do whatever it takes. I don't want to be this guy.
I used to think Jack Berger was Carrie's worst boyfriend, and that it was ironic because that relationship is probably where she was the best girlfriend she ever was. But one day I saw the light and I realized that yes, Jack Berger was definitely the worst boyfriend Carrie ever had, but he's also exactly the boyfriend Carrie deserved. And she's not the victim in that relationship the way her outrage about being dumped via sticky note leads us to believe. Because not only did Carrie have no business pursuing a relationship with Berger in the first place, in case anyone forgot, Carrie Bradshaw is actually diabolical. In fact, I'll take it a step further and say Berger was Carrie's karma for how she treated Aiden and others. And she finally got to experience what it would be like to date herself, a chronically insecure writer. So here's why Jack Berger was exactly the boyfriend Carrie deserved. In season 5, Carrie is finally publishing her first book and she's getting ready for her big book launch party, which was planned by Samantha, who Carrie also doesn't deserve, but that's a topic for another day. Back to Carrie. So Carrie's at her book editor Courtney's office preparing for a party where she meets Jack Berger, and we are immediately introduced to his self-deprecating humor when Courtney introduces him to Carrie as a great writer, and he immediately jokes about his book being half off, which Carrie finds charming because she doesn't yet know that he is not kidding. That man's self-esteem is on the floor. So Carrie and his banter lead them out of Courtney's office and onto a little impromptu date. And it was a date because they didn't just go through a quick little stroll through the park. They didn't want to part ways. So this man brings Carrie along with him to do his errands and shit for the rest of the day. So color Carrie's shocked when she invites Berger to be her date to her book party. He informs her that he loved to, but his girlfriend has such and such a plan. This is the first sign of just how much Berger and Carrie have in common. They're not both just writers. They are both people who find gray areas to cheat on their significant others and completely pretend that that's not what's happening. In fact, that's actually Carrie's thing. Remember earlier when I told y'all Carrie is diabolical? Here's one of the main reasons why. Carrie is a cheater. Hear me good. I did not say that Carrie cheated on Aiden. I said Carrie is a cheater. Carrie has cheated on just about every boyfriend we've seen her have. And she wasn't just cheating on Aiden when she was full-blown Big. No. She was also cheating when they got back together and she was leaving Aiden's cabin to go back to the city and have secret dinner dates with Big, where she would get upset if he talked too much about other women he was seeing. Carrie never calls it cheating, so the audience doesn't see it for what it is, which is what she often does, because she doesn't just cheat on Aiden with Big. Even Big, who she claimed to love so much she cheat on. This gal literally took the caterer home from an event Big took her to and simply decides it's not cheating because Big hadn't told her he loved her yet. In fact, the same way she cheats on Big and comes up with some arbitrary metric to absolve herself is exactly how she ends up doing Berger, but I'm getting ahead of myself. For now, let's focus on the fact that Carrie is a gray area cheater who refuses to see herself as such and will take your man at a moment's notice. It wasn't just Natasha she was willing to do like that because she just loved Big so much, which is precisely why when Carrie learns that Berger has a girlfriend, she doesn't see it as the red flag that it is, that this man who has a girlfriend is flirting with her and spending the day with her, a woman, not his girlfriend, without mentioning said girlfriend. Her takeaway is,
that guy's a jerk. Thing is, I don't think he is. I sparked with this person. I never spark. I wonder how happy they are. This is not a good side of me.
Of course, Carrie doesn't think this makes Berger a jerk, because that would require her to see herself as a jerk when she does the same kind of shit. And this conversation damn near mirrors when Carrie was having an affair with Big while he was married to Natasha, and Charlotte had to be the voice of reason then. Carrie ignored her and found her truth-telling annoying then too. But back to Berger and Carrie. So at this point, she's just met him and already ignored one giant red flag because she is exactly the same kind of red flag. And despite Berger telling her he couldn't be her date to her party because his girlfriend and him was doing something or the other, he does make an appearance at her party just long enough to make a joke about how much bigger her book party was than his. And yet again, Carrie finds this charming because she still doesn't know any better. Now, the next time Carrie sees Berger, that's when Carrie really confirms for me that she is a villain of epic proportion. And I really don't think the Sex and the City audience paid it much attention or broke it down. I know I hadn't for a long time. But when Carrie next runs into Berger, they both happen to be in the Hamptons for the weekend. When she and Berger sit down to talk, he informs her that he and his girlfriend recently broke up. And Carrie tells him that she recently got out of a relationship, referring to Aiden. Now, here's where shit gets crazy. Carrie tells him she and Aiden actually broke up for the second time, and she starts ranting about how it wasn't a bad enough breakup the first time and they needed to sufficiently hurt each other the second time around to make sure it was really over.
What the hell did you just say?
Excuse me, bitch, what? Each other? Hurt each other? What kind of are this? Oh my God. The first time Carrie dated Aiden, she was big all over New York City while he sat at home making wood furniture from scratch for her friends. Like, she wasn't just cheating with Big. It ain't enough to the man. She had to have Aiden for a poppy show. She was Big so much she started complaining and being mean to Aiden about how he wasn't bad and giving him a inferiority complex. Then, when he breaks up with her for being a cheating bitch and tries to get his life back together, and by back together we mean tries to become something else because of how she done gave him a complex about Wall Street bros, but that's a conversation for another day. She demands he take her back, like makes herself fully out to be the victim, like she hasn't had the whole popping pussy behind this man's back. She's in his face at his door running on like, what's the problem? What? I don't get it. What's the issue? I only behind your back. What happened?
But I lie in bed at night and I think about us and I think about you holding me and...
You broke my heart! Carrie.
Then, when he takes her back, she refuses to cut off the man she cheated on him with. And she not only has the man calling her house, taking his calls in front of Aiden, going to dinner with him behind his back. She bring the man to Aiden's cabin because she don't have a lick of respect for Aiden. And can you imagine a universe where after Big and Carrie finally got together, Big had told Carrie Natasha's his friend and she can't make him cut her off, then invited Natasha over to Carrie's apartment? Carrie would have massacred them all. She'd have jumped out the window. And then, even after Aiden proposed to this raggedy bitch, buys her a new MacBook and buys her apartment and the apartment next door, she wears this man's engagement ring around her neck and continues to treat him like shit and gaslight him about her relationship with Big until Aiden finally has to accept that this bitch will never love him and leave. That is what happened. But somehow, Carrie has spun the story into a tale where they both hurt each other, when really it was just Carrie curb stomping every last piece of dignity out of Aiden. When Carrie said this to Berger, I knew Carrie is actually out of her mind. And deep in his soul, Berger must have known it too, because he hears her rant and immediately goes running to his motorcycle. But he can't even drive good, just so he could get the away from Carrie. Despite the red flags waving in both directions, Berger showed up later and told Carrie that he ran away when she started talking about her bad breakup because he realized that he didn't know if he was ready to do that again. Because this isn't just a man fresh out of a relationship and not ready to move on. This is a man explicitly making that clear in both his words and his actions. But Carrie loved red flags, so she and Berger become a couple naturally. Now, despite Carrie bitching and moaning about how much she wanted Berger because I sparked with this person, I never spark. The minute she actually gets him, at the first opportunity to have phone sex with Big, she couldn't wait. And in the same episode that Carrie is having phone sex with Big, she has the nerve to be complaining about the fact that Berger doesn't seem over his ex because he flipped his phone to Bird when she left a message on his answering machine. Bitch, what? As far as not being over exes go, I take still mad at that ex over still having phone sex with the ex. So she, the bitch still telephone man she had an affair with, wakes Berger up to ask him why he flipped his ex off because Carrie can't imagine anybody setting boundaries and not wanting to talk to an ex. And Berger informs her that he's annoyed by his ex because she keeps calling him trying to get him to have lunch with her for closure. So Carrie asks him how he feels about that, and Berger tells her she cheated on him and it's going to take way more than a lunch for him to get closure. And we're just going to take it at face value that Berger was really cheated on and allow him to feel like a victim, even though we have reason to doubt this because from what we know, Berger was the one kicking it with Carrie when he was in a relationship. But anyway, let's break down what Berger is saying. Berger has not only made it abundantly clear to Carrie that he is not only not over his last relationship, he is specifically hurt because his ex cheated on him. And that hurt has him flipping off inanimate objects because her voice came through them. Do you know what that makes Berger? Better yet, do you know who that makes Berger? Aiden. The Berger we meet is Aiden after his breakup with cheating ass Carrie, as told to us by the woman who dated Aiden after Carrie, Nina Katz. And not only that, despite the fact that Carrie and Berger only just got together, Carrie has somehow managed to already cheat on Berger with the exact same man she cheated on Aiden with. So you would think that Carrie would hear Berger tell her he's still reeling over his ex that cheated on him and feel panic at not just the fact that this man is not emotionally available and not ready for a new relationship, but she is not the woman for him because she's precisely the kind of woman who would hurt him as she is a cheating bitch and nip it in the bud right there. But some Now, Carrie hears this, looks at this anxiety-ridden man lamenting about the pains he feels from dating a woman just like her, and says to the audience, she now knew they could be something serious. What? What? Then, just like she absolves herself from cheating on Big with some arbitrary nonsense about it doesn't count because he hadn't said I love you yet, she absolves herself of cheating on Berger using the logic that it somehow doesn't count that she cheated because they weren't serious yet until he told her about how his last girlfriend cheated on him. I say, you know what? Carrie is actually a villain. And from this point forward, she walked willingly into all the hell Berger's about to give her. And boy, does Berger and his insecurities give her hell. Let's go through each time Berger projected his insecurities onto Carrie, shall we? First, Berger puts out his new book, which is selling well. Then, Carrie decides to take Berger's miserable ass to Prada, and she buys him an expensive Prada shirt he would never have bought for himself typically, nor likely have been able to afford. But instead of appreciating the gift, Berger starts to feel insecure and act cold and standoffish towards Carrie, which is only worsened when he realized that the reason Carrie was able to buy him the shirt was because she got a large check because her book was doing so well in France. And of course, Carrie did sense this energy shift from him, and she eventually learns why when she runs into she and Berger's book editor, Courtney, and Courtney informs her that she was fired and many of her authors were dropped, including Berger. Berger is probably known for being one of Carrie's worst boyfriends because he eventually breaks up with her on a post-it note, but I don't think that's what makes Berger so terrible. Berger sucks because he's the kind of man who hates to see his woman win because it makes him feel less of a man. He's the kind of man who projects his insecurities onto his partner and starts both acting and lashing out a very fragile sense of masculinity. So it should come as no surprise that after Berger learns that Carrie knows he's lost his book deal, this man started carrying on worse than ever before. And I will cut Berger the slack of acknowledging that the man was going through a rough season in his life. He had just lost both his girlfriend, his book deal, and his new book was flopping. That would probably bring anyone to a low point. And Berger's ass in bed, so that also doesn't help. The man is down bad in every capacity. But none of that changes the fact that this Berger is a hater who could not stand to see Carrie shine. So when Carrie invites him to attend Samantha's boyfriend Smith's play with her, he decides to show his ass. Berger shows up to pick Carrie up on the motorcycle he can barely ride, but is determined to ride tonight because he thinks riding a motorcycle will somehow restore some of his masculinity. And despite the fact that Carrie does not want to get on the back of his motorcycle because she doesn't want to mess up her hair, and she also knows the man cannot ride that motorbike good, so she asks him to please drive slow and carefully. But he decides to speed and drive recklessly, ignoring Carrie digging her nails into him because she's so scared, which provokes Carrie to finally read him his rights. And I'm not going to stay on this too long, but I feel compelled to point out that it's a common thing in abusive relationships for abusive partners to drive dangerously on the road to endanger and scare their partners. So this is extra up and a sick for them. Only for them to walk across the street and Berger immediately revert right back to resenting her success and leaving the event because the paparazzi was familiar with Carrie and not him. Mind you, this is an event Samantha set up, so of course the paparazzi know Carrie anyway. Now, here's the thing. As up as this was of Berger, do you know who's the kind of person to get a gift from their more successful significant other and twist it into proof that they don't think they're good enough for them, so they decide to leave an event they were invited to? Carrie Bradshaw. This stunt is almost exactly what Carrie did to Big when he bought her that expensive duck purse. I'd actually argue that Carrie was worse because Berger spiraled and went home. Carrie spiraled and took another man home. Oh my God. For those who need the refresher, when Big and Carrie were together, Big gifted Carrie an expensive duck purse. And Carrie, bitch with all kinds of weird items in keeping with that purse, starts lamenting that the purse isn't her style and is thus proof that Big really wishes she were a more high-class woman she isn't. Can we just say in general how ridiculous this notion is? And Carrie tends to revert back to this. When Aiden was going to propose to her, when the first ring he picked out wasn't her, so she's like, oh, it's all wrong. It's all wrong. It means he doesn't know me. Carrie is a child, a teenage girl. A relationship isn't built on the relationship that I'm having and all the commitment and love and loyalty I'm experiencing. It's really about this divine message from the universe that if he didn't pick me out the right material item, that he doesn't truly love or know me. Bitch, what? That know what kind of engagement ring you like? And I'm sorry, I'm getting carried away. Back to the script. I'm sorry. Top tier projection. So when Big takes her to an event with his crowd where she wears the purse, through no fault of Big's or anyone else's, Carrie starts feeling much like Berger did when he arrived at that red carpet and no one knew him. But instead of recognizing that this is a personal insecurity thing like Berger did and just go home, Carrie starts picking a fight with Big and takes the waiter home. So again, I say, while Berger is the worst, he is Carrie and Carrie deserves it. But they don't break up immediately after the Prada event. No. But they do start hanging on by a thread because every word out of Carrie's mouth ruffled this Berger's insecurities. Carrie asked this man one day innocently if he was going to write, but what he heard her say was, bum ass, no book deal, having ass, you gonna write something today or lay on your ass? That's what you plan to do? You have any job? Then, on another occasion, one where I actually don't think Berger was doing anything wrong, honestly, Charlotte sits in on a date he and Carrie are having because Charlotte is escaping a bad date of her own. And Charlotte complains that the man got her carnations. So Berger jokes, oh no, he got you flowers. And Charlotte and Carrie begin to go back and forth about the petty reasons they'd stop dating a guy. And Berger makes a joke that all guys are and Berger really was joking, and it read like he was being playful and trying to make conversation with Charlotte. But at this point, Carrie is finally over his self-deprecating humor that she once found charming, but now sees as him projecting his insecurities onto others, which is fair. So she takes offense at Berger's jokes and scolds this man in front of Charlotte. So after dinner while they're in the cab, they bicker and bicker long enough until Berger finally says, you know what? I think we need to take a break. And Carrie and her friends are outraged by this. But you know who's the type of person to start picking fights and creating problems in their relationship before asking for space so that they can ultimately blow the shit up? Carrie Bradshaw. Like Carrie Bradshaw. When Carrie got with Aiden, and honestly throughout their relationship, there's multiple examples, but when Carrie got with Aiden, her desperate need for dysfunction starts plaguing her and convincing her to create problems with Aiden because she's convinced a relationship needs stress, anxiety, and uncertainty to be worthwhile. It's also because Carrie didn't like Aiden precisely when he started to fall in love with her, because Carrie thinks very little of herself and thus doesn't think highly of men who think highly of her. That's why she was super pressed for Aiden when she first met him and he wasn't feeling her for being a smoker. And she was super pressed for him when she saw him after the breakup and realized he wasn't checking for her. He's more valuable to her when he doesn't want her. Because in her mind, a man who sees his value wouldn't want her as is. She would need to change herself to be worthy of his love. That's why in every relationship, she starts trying to switch up. But I am getting off course again. That is a video for another day. Back to what I was saying about Carrie creating problems only to ask for space and do Carrie started resisting Aiden's desire to have a stable, loving relationship with her and just starts beefing with him about any little thing until she tells him she needs space to miss him, only to come back together and shortly after start cheating on the man. Whereas, Berger takes a week to himself, and when he comes back, he and Carrie decide they're going to stay together, despite the fact that Carrie had already come to the logical conclusion that they should break up. And she and Berger have sex one last time unbeknownst to Carrie because she wakes up in the morning and Berger is gone, having left behind only a post-it note saying, "I'm sorry, don't hate me." Let me be clear, Berger is terrible. If any other woman had dated him and this happened, the worst alive. But Carrie? Suddenly it don't seem as heinous, because again, come on. Carrie and Berger are slightly different flavors of the same f***ed up ice cream. And again, I would argue that Berger's ice cream tastes a little bit better because Berger at least realizes quickly after reuniting with Carrie that it's a mistake for them to be together, which Carrie knows too. And he leaves immediately. And yes, he is a coward, a bitch, but he knows that. And he's ashamed of the way he's been showing up in his relationship with Carrie, which is why he bows out in the dead of the night like a coward and mentions it to nobody, including his friends. Compare that to Carrie, who would have saved Aiden a shit ton of pain and suffering had she just left him after she asked for space because she couldn't stomach stability, instead of cheating on him and giving him a lifetime worth of trauma he has not healed from, even in the current Sex and the City reboot decades later. And not just that, but Berger knows he was wrong in his relationship with Carrie, thus the "I'm sorry, don't hate me," unlike Carrie, who goes around telling men she just met that she and Aiden hurt each other. I think Carrie and Berger are similar, but what makes Carrie worse isn't just the gravity of her crimes, it's her perception of her crimes and the world around her. And the best proof of this is how Carrie paints Berger breaking up with her on a post-it note to be the worst, weakest shit ever done to someone in a relationship. She goes on and on about how a relationship is supposed to be ended in a way that honors what two people had. She talks about how cowardly it is. She insists that her post-it note breakup is more important than Charlotte's engagement. Let's really think about who the bitch running around saying Berger is the worst to ever do it and a coward, because he, the emotionally unavailable man she pursued a relationship with despite knowing he was reeling from his last cheating acts, and who she cheated on seconds into the relationship, broke up with her on a post-it note. Let's analyze who that person is. Carrie is. This is a bitch who recently ended Natasha and Big's marriage because after Big and he in Natasha's home, Natasha catches her and this pussy bitch runs away, causing Natasha to fall and lose her tooth. And she still feels the need to hunt Natasha down to tell her what a good person she is because she somehow doesn't think what she's done is enough justification for Natasha and company to hate her in peace. This is the same bitch that cheated on Aiden with Big, begged Finn back only to keep making a fool of him with Big, allow him to buy an apartment and get engaged to him only to start wearing his ring on her neck. This is the same bitch who, after learning that the woman who dated Aiden after she did, Nina Katz, didn't have a good impression of her over the fact that she broke Aiden's heart. Carrie is dumbfounded that anyone would hear the story of her and Aiden and not think highly of her, and yet again feels compelled to hunt down a woman Aiden dated to convince her that she wasn't bad to Aiden. That same bitch who was giving it up like that has the nerve to perceive Berger breaking up with her on a post-it note as anything other than the universe giving her a mere sliver of what she deserves. And the same Carrie who was outraged that Aiden would dare tell anyone about how terrible she did him after she cheated on him and broke off her engagement runs down Berger's friends in the club so she can tell them how dirty he did her and that he's ass in bed.
Hell no, man.
Listen, Jack Berger is one of the worst kind of men you could have the misfortune of dating. But for Carrie, he is precisely what she deserved, and he didn't do shit to her that she hasn't done worse to others. Y'all should subscribe to the Patreon. I put, for the people who want to hear me doing all my cursing, we put the uncensored versions of every recap on the Patreon. So do that.